result of this pandemic, which is around, people are on lockdown, people are in quarantine, and this is worldwide. This is not just about the UK. Now, what I believe as much as possible is something which is crucial at this time. People are actually looking for opportunities. Some people are actually really locking down. People are trying to re-engage with their passion. People are going to engage with their dreams. And people are actually, in a way, preparing for when we are ready to rock and roll again. And I think this is very important at this time. So I've chosen to get a few guests on. And today, what I wanted to come on today is because I saw this very interesting young girl. And this young girl, I think she's about 8 or up to 12 or so. She's had the idea of helping the NHS and the doctors with this PPE and creating these masks. And what was touching is when one of the doctors or health frontline said, hey, we like this and this is what we do. And because of the problem with PPE, it is realized that she saw an opportunity. Now, Julian Hall, who is an entrepreneur, founder of a 4-year-old social enterprise called Ultra Education, which has been successfully teaching entrepreneurship to primary and secondary school-age children from disadvantaged background, multi-awarding gentleman. I want to bring him on because, Julian, I want to welcome you. And I start off with this bit about this little girl. What's your take on what is happening now with this pandemic and opportunities which is existing out there?
So when I saw that news story about the little girl, I mean, it really brought home to me why we do what we do and why our ambition about entrepreneurship for kids is so important, because she saw a need and she saw an opportunity for her to respond to that need and to contribute the skills that she had to something which is important. I mean, you know, later on in life, she can say she did her bit to contribute to how the NHS frontline workers are operating and their safety. And it'll be something that she'll, not only will she remember, but it's something that I believe she will, it will now formulate a different mindset for her. So that in the future, she now knows that she's capable of responding to important problems. And this is the thing, it's when we talk about entrepreneurship for kids, it's not just about kids making lots of money and, you know, being overnight sensations. That's amazing if that happens, but really it's the skills development that they can really grab hold of with both hands today, and those skills which will benefit them for the rest of their lives. And it's inspiring. The reason why that story was shared is because it's inspiring. It's uncommon for a child to respond in that way, right? What I'm saying is that shouldn't be uncommon. So as great as that story is, the fact that it's uncommon is a problem. It's a societal problem. There are probably other cultures around the world where that wouldn't raise an eyebrow, because there is just a response that whether you are 90 or 9 years old, that you would take to any kind of issue in and around your local area, your family. But for us, because our children and young people are focused on core academics, it means that it's difficult for them to apply what they learn in school to practical problems around them. And again, you know, I applaud that young girl and her mother for being able to take the time to respond in such a meaningful way.
And it is like what I always talk about, and something we talk about, seizing the moment, seizing the day, uncharted situation around, okay, you know, let's face it, it's a reality that people are dying at the same time, but at the same time, people are seeking opportunities and creating opportunities at this time as well. Which is very powerful. Now, Julian, one of the things, you've been working with children, because you said you stopped working with adults now. I saw a picture you showed me the other day with you at 1 year of age, and I said, man, this guy's really serious. He went all the way to 1 year of age. What is it that actually inspired you to really work with children, with the entrepreneur and ultra kids?
So, you know, I joke that I don't work with adults anymore. And that's because maybe, I mean, you know, when I used to coach and consult businesses some time ago,
Yes.
I realized that many of the issues that business owners face aren't mechanical, they're dynamic. So it's not the mechanics of how you create a successful business, it's the dynamics and the mindset. So I'll give you a perfect example. If I suggested to a business owner, you should increase your prices, or you should go onto YouTube to help promote your business, or have you thought about a different market, or have you thought about expanding, or have you thought about delegating more? Those are mechanical suggestions. You can find them in a book. But the reason why business owners are challenged by some of those suggestions is because there's an internal dialogue that starts, which says, well, who am I to increase the price of my product? And what they're saying is, it's not the value of the product, it's the value of themselves. So they're saying, am I valuable enough to increase the value of my product? They don't want to delegate because, they don't want to let go of their baby. And that's another kind of psychological limit. And they may not think about whether or not they can expand to new markets, create different products and services, because they don't have this cognitive flexibility that we'll talk about in a second. And so I realized that a lot of those challenges that we as adults face when it comes to business are down to mindset and habit. And the way in which I believed I could impact that most meaningfully is by going back to young people and thinking about the next generation of entrepreneur and saying to myself, well, if entrepreneurship is this thing that I'm in love with and I believe has benefited my life hugely, how can I spend my time and my purpose benefiting entrepreneurship? And I believe that my greatest impact will be to children and young people, so that the next generation of entrepreneur is more successful than this generation of entrepreneur.
Wow, fantastic! And therefore, you mentioned about one of your key steps, and we look at that 5 points about developing cognitive flexibility at this time.
So, in terms of the way in which the brain functions, and psychologists will tell you that cognitive flexibility is an executive function of the brain, which means that it's one of the main functions that enable us to think and process information. It's the ability for you to, in parallel, or flip between varying concepts.
Yes.
And the reason why that's important in this time is because in the world of business, the outcome of cognitive flexibility, the output of cognitive flexibility, is pivoting, right? So lots of people will be familiar now with the term pivoting in a business, insofar as you may have an idea for a business or a product or a marketing plan, but you might pivot and go in another direction because something has changed in the market, with your customers, internally. So you may do something different. You might switch from one lane to another. You may achieve the same outcome, but you're doing it in a slightly different way. But that requires a flexibility in your mindset to be able to, think critically about what you're currently doing, and then be able to switch tracks. Now, that's not something that we're necessarily taught in school either, but it is certainly, and more today, a growing need for business and startups. And the reason why I wanted to discuss that with you today is because in the pandemic, we have businesses which are forced to pivot. They're forced to change. They're forced to be flexible in their approach to how they respond to their customers and their clients, and how they deal with all of these challenges internally.
So this is like what we're talking about is like a mindset. Then, if anything, they've got to sort of shape their mindset. This is like the base, if anything, to set the stage within this period of the pandemic thing.
Absolutely. And I think this is, I'm sure we'll have all heard that this is a time in history, whether it's in recessions or other times of where there are epidemics and pandemics, where as much as there is disruption, there is also opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's not just about opportunity to make a quick buck. It's actually about an opportunity to solve problems in ways that haven't been solved before. And it's relevant because you're responding to existing problems. So we all know that there's this term now that people are using, the new normal, right? And what will the new normal look like? And so the opportunity in that regard is to consider, well, the business that I'm in, what will be the new normal for my business? What will be the new normal for my sector, for my industry?
Yes.
And what can I do now that will position me to take advantage of that new normal, or to be there ready to commercialize the opportunity that new normal will present? And that doesn't necessarily require lots of action. You don't necessarily need to be doing loads of stuff every day, but it does require a time to think and process and absorb what's happening around you to be able to know how to best respond.
And therefore, that leads on to how, at this point as well, and the point that you mentioned is about building the level of relationship, because people have to start to build relationship, or do they build on existing relationship, or will they have new type of relationship at this time to really move things a bit forward?
And, you know, relationships is something that I have traded on, and it has really been the bedrock of my business, and it has been for the last kind of 15, 20 years. And I remember speaking to an agency in Shoreditch about 10 years ago, and they went to a conference where they were in front of, you know, lots of kind of top 500 businesses who were talking about how they choose an agency. And they concluded that they would expect the agencies or the service providers they work with to have the capability to deliver on the services that they are bidding for and that they'd like to contract. However, the final decision usually came down to whether or not they believed they would get on with that agency and if they liked them.
Yes.
So the likability factor was a commercial factor. It wasn't just a thing that came, you know, outside of the decision-making process. It was core to the decision-making process. And it's because if you're going to work with someone in any regard, you're going to have a relationship of sorts for a period of time. Could be, you know, you might engage someone to do a logo. There's a relationship you're going to be developing with them. You might go all the way to partnering with someone in a business, and that's going to be like a marriage. So, you know, your ability to foster and develop relationships is going to be key. And on a much bigger scale, the relationship you have with your market, with your customers, and that is often translated through your brand, is the thing that develops that trust. Because, you know, there's this idea, there's a couple called Thomas and Penny Power who talk about this idea of knowing, liking, and then following, right? So first of all, people have got to know that you exist, and social media is a great way to do that. Then they've got to like you. So it's know, follow, like. So they know you exist, then they follow you, and then they start to like you. If they follow you and they start to, you know, work out how Silburn ticks, then at some point they may like you. If they like you, then they may take action on something that is commercial. But if they don't like you, they won't. And I know people who would do business with service providers who are less capable, but they like them more, than service providers who were better, but they disliked them. So again, building that relationship or building the awareness of why that's important, and the techniques that you can use early on, I think is invaluable for anybody.
And what about, is it building on relationship or creating also new relationship?
Well, it's both, actually, because I think, you know, even when you're building relationships, the building part are, you know, that's mini creation stages, right? So you're always creating new experiences, new dialogue within an existing relationships. That's how you build it. It's by constantly creating. Creating is not a one-off event. But to your point, starting brand new relationships, yes, is important. And I'm always open. I'm always having brand new conversations all the time. The difference now is that because I've built up a brand, those relationships often come to me as opposed to me having to go out and find them. So I'm very, I use the word fortunate loosely in that regard. But I'm always talking to new people to see how there can be a fortuitous relationship where I can add value and they can add value too. And that happens with people that I speak to from the Far East to the far west of the States and everywhere else in between.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for coming on, and those and see this on the replay. I'm with Julian Hall, the multi-award winning founder of Ultra Education. And we're talking about 5 tips from the entrepreneur during this period of COVID-19, which is a very crucial time. We just touched on develop cognitive flexibility, build relationship, and because Julian as well focus a lot on creating entrepreneurs for the future. Now, Julian, just the same bit, if someone then is just like we talk about build relationship, someone is out there, they're at home, they want to create something new, they're picking up on some ideas. This abstract person, what do you say to someone now is there, got this idea, got this vision, developing cognitive flexibility, building relationship? What do they do? What do you say to someone now watching?
Focus on solving a burning problem for someone. Because if someone, and when I say someone, it could be an individual or it could be an organization, if they have a burning problem, and if you're well placed to solve that problem, they will pay you to solve that problem.
Yeah.
And so these aren't cursory or slight or low impact services or products, because the buying behavior of everybody has changed now. We're now going down to essentials, right? People are talking about being essential. And so the products and services that companies and individuals and organizations are purchasing are now essentials. They're not the, you know, the kind of froth on top of it. It's not the icing and the cherry. It's the main ingredients people are going for. And so the way to do that is to talk to them, is to have conversations and say, what's keeping you guys up at night? What real challenges are you facing today? And just listen. And if what you have, you're able to reshape to be able to solve that problem, then you're onto a winner. Then you have something which has a commercial value that somebody will pay for, because we've seen through the issuance of the Chancellor's budget that there is money. The government does have money. Organizations do have money.
Yes.
There's millions and millions and millions of pounds going into keeping this economy going, right? And so, but the money is being spent wisely. You know, people are now thinking 2, 3, 4 times before they spend the money. But again, and this is just kind of entrepreneurship 101, and that is, and it's very common in the startup tech community. So anyone in that community will be thinking, you know, this is old news for us. But to the wider community, it's always about what problem are you solving and who are you solving it for, and then you put a value on that.
Fantastic for that. And so pick that up. Now, what would you say is the third one now? One of your third tip in regards. I think we're talking about habits, new type of habits as well. Yeah.
So I was speaking with. It's interesting. I was speaking with a young man who started a podcast. His name's Jonas, and he's made. I think he's about 19, 20 years old, and he started a podcast to help motivate other young people. And he asked me about this idea around motivation, and I said that, you know, motivation is the impetus, but habit is the thing that creates the momentum that actually develops the real value in the thing that you want to deliver. And what I mean by that is the way in which you think will affect your actions. If you repeat those actions for 30 to 90 days, you've now created a new habit. That new habit will then change your character and your actions and so on and so forth, right? So motivation isn't the difficult bit. To be motivated, all you've got to do is watch a 3-minute video of a great speaker. That will motivate you, but it won't keep you going. It won't change your habit.
It won't sustain you.
Right? And this is the thing that I've said to you, Silban, and I've always applauded that you have been consistent. This is now a habit for you. Doing this show is now a habit. You do not have to motivate yourself all the time to get things going, right? Because you're now just, you know, on autopilot, setting everything up, getting things going. It's now almost an autopilot for you, right? You're doing it habitually, and that's what success looks like. It's doing things, being consistent, especially when you're a content creator, right? My wife and I, every morning we get up and we do a workout called Insanity. For any of you who know what Insanity is, right? You know, this kind of Sean T workout.
John Dre, what's your guy name?
Sean T.
Oh, yeah,
and so we've been doing this workout for years together, and you know, just recently our kids joined in, and we said to my daughter, who was, you know, saying, if this is really hard, don't want to get up early in the morning, and we said, well, we don't want to get up either, right? But we're doing it out of habit, not motivation. right? Nobody's motivated to get up at 6 a.m. and, you know, kill yourself in the sitting room floor because you're working out. Nobody's motivated to do that, but through habit, you will. And so for me as an entrepreneur, I've deliberately created habits that look like hard work, that look like consistency, that look like showing up, that look like doing things that I'm not comfortable with, that look like always caring about my audience, that look like always thinking about the problem that I'm trying to solve, that look like always adding value. These are habits that I've now created, and it's now second nature. I don't have to think about whether or not I'm going to do these things. It just happens. And so when I take advice from my advisors and my mentors, I'm looking to see what new habits do I need to create. And creating a new habit is difficult. You know, it can take 7 to 14 days to break the back of a new habit, and then it can take even longer to embed it.
I'm glad you started to say that, because you just you sort of thought about what I wanted to say about how to create a new habit.
Yes.
I didn't want to stop you there, but you stopped me from asking the question. But go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, creating a new habit. Creating a new habit is ultimately about psychology. I was saying to my son recently that whether it's losing weight, whether it's eating better, whether it's starting a business, whether it's trying to further yourself in your career, all of these things are often psychological.
Yeah.
3/4 of people, in fact, it's more than that. It's maybe 80% of people never ask for a pay rise.
Yes.
Right? So if you don't ask, how are you going to get it? Now, that's a mindset. It's not that you cannot ask for the pay rise. Of course you can. You may get a no, but you can navigate that no, which is the reason why executive coaches exist, because they know how to help you go up the ladder, right?
Yes.
But why didn't you ask? You didn't ask because there was an internal dialogue that wasn't necessarily true and mostly false that stopped you from asking, right? You haven't set up a business because you're afraid of risk, when actually there's a risk in being in employment, which we've now found out through this pandemic.
Yes.
Right? You may have a 9-to-5 job, but that's almost now which is more risky? Is it having full-time employment or having your own business? Right? And it's a debate. It's not either or. What I'm saying is one isn't more risky than the other, but there is a fear around doing things which you're not used to. It's not that starting a business doesn't work and it's too risky. It's just that you're uncomfortable with it. It's not that losing weight or becoming more healthy is difficult. It's just that it's a different thing for you to do, right? And so we are creatures of habit. On the flip side, meaning that, and again, scientists have told us that the majority of things, Sylvan, we do during the day are the same. So even though we have this thing called free will, we actually spend the day doing the things that we already do in days prior. We rarely do new things, right? We wake up, we probably get up out of bed in the same way, brush our teeth in the same way, shower in the same way, listen to the same music, open the same Instagram pages, have the moan in the same way. A lot of us can probably be on autopilot on our way to work, right?
Actually, that was what I was going to say right there. And you may answer this question. If you're normally on a 9-to-5 thing, when I used to do a lot of 9-to-5, you could literally find yourself driving on the motorway to a destination, and you don't really know how you reach, but you just reach because you're just there on this autopilot. You stop and get your Costa, you follow the same routine, the petrol station, hit the A2, bam, Maidstone, Kent. There you are.
There you go.
You don't know how you reach there.
Right. So now to break that cycle is difficult. It's not easy to do something new, which is the reason why people get coaches. So even though, coaches are getting a pretty bad name out there, it's more about a mechanism for accountability. So a coach could be your partner, it could be a friend, it could be a family member that you've said to them, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to start a YouTube channel, I'm going to spend more time with my kids, I'm going to do whatever, right? I'm going to get some life insurance, right? It's just a measure of accountability, because sometimes we just need a bit of help to get things over the line when we can't motivate ourselves to get things over the line. You sometimes need someone else to help you, and that's all very normal.
It's very interesting, that bit. And before I go on to the bit about solve a problem, but you have actually highlighted something that has actually messed up the status quo. The whole thing which is happening now is pandemic and the lockdown. It has messed up the norm. So therefore, persons now have to now start to think now, how do I navigate the situation? Could we say that persons are now in a very uncomfortable situation? Very uncomfortable.
You know, the interesting thing is some are and some aren't.
Yes.
If you've already been used to uncertainty, then this isn't uncomfortable.
Yes.
So I've been used to uncertainty for a long time.
Yes.
This is just a different type of uncertainty,
Yes.
right? But I see it as a challenge. I see this as a challenge and as an opportunity. For me, it's about how do I, my family, my business, my community, the people that we care about, how do we come out of this with lessons that we've learned, with things that we can take away to make ourselves better, to improve the way that we all do things. And it's you know, it's just, it is heartbreaking and it is sad. The lives that are being lost, the challenges that people are facing, the funerals that can't be had. You know, it is extremely, extremely sad. But what we do know is that if we don't change the way that we do things, that something like this will happen again. I mean, history tells us, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a financial crash, these things are just part of our existence. And the way in which we respond to these challenges is the important thing. It's not trying to stop these things from happening. These things are part of natural law, as it were. But it's how do we respond as humans, as business people, as parents and educators. And that for me is where I see the opportunity in now, because now we have to do it, you see. Before, these are just, you know, nice words, right?
Yes.
But now we have to do it. So now we have to do it. Let's double down and let's make sure that we are focused on, because we now have the time, right, to focus on these things which before we looked at as a luxury, but now we see are a necessity, and we can rebalance the way that we see things going forward.
And what I'm seeing right there is what we're doing now is seeking to solve a problem. How do we solve problems now? That's what this is about, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And for me, the best people at solving problems are entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Entrepreneurs solve problems. And I don't mean entrepreneurs that just have a business. I mean, people who think entrepreneurially, right? You know, your ability to innovate and therefore do things in a new way, your ability to problem solve, your ability to think critically, your ability to communicate an idea, your ability to unpack and dissect a challenge into its smaller parts and then work out what to do next. You know, being able to eat an elephant, you know, a massive problem. How do you do that? You just take one bite at a time. The ability to not procrastinate, which we've spoken about before, right? All of these things are entrepreneurial skills. It's an entrepreneurial mindset. You could have an entrepreneurial mindset as a parent, as a teacher, as a doctor, as a broadcaster, as a business owner. So it's not just someone who's running a business. It is a mindset. And for me, that's the important bit.
Now, Julian, you just talk about this whole mindset and the whole problem bit now. And a side note, and this does actually resonate. The UK is in a situation where the protection, the PPE, equipments for protection for frontline nurses, doctors. And what we're finding out is a situation whereby we do not have this, a country like this. So we're going to China, and therefore you're looking at a situation like, is it that we weren't prepared? Now, you mentioned that with this happening now, we're actually learning how to ensure that this doesn't happen again.
Yes. And I guess in the post-mortem, which I'm sure will be another interesting thing to watch between Twitter and the main news broadcasters and all the bloggers, you know, what will we learn from this? But what new systems and processes will be put in place as a country, both in terms of statewide and more locally, to be able to respond to all of these challenges. And I guess what's interesting is that, you know, the UK is doing a very good job of throwing money at this.
Yes.
Because that is speeding up the development of whether it's vaccines, whether it's, you know, putting the call out to businesses who can provide and supply PPE. But I'm sure they also know that if they were more prepared, then it would have cost less, right?
Yes.
So that's really what it is. It's about the cost effectiveness of the solution, because there's a solution to everything, right?
Yes.
It's just how much, how long, and what's the collateral damage.
Yes.
And that's what we need to now become. We need to become more effective around how much, how long, and the collateral damage of that solution.
And that resonates and link and can compare as well to persons right now when they are seeking to embark on different journeys as well, where they use the same sort of principle. Now, Julian, you focus a lot on children, and the importance of the next generation. That is something which is your pet peeve. And you always say, it's a pity you didn't learn, or you weren't in that school of this before, like how these children are actually learning. I know you are creating great opportunities with these young people. The next generation, the importance of the next generation in light of what's happening now.
So again, just looking at history, we can quite comfortably predict that when I'm in my 70s and 80s, something like this may happen again.
Yes.
And it's the next generation, it's the students, it's your kids, it's my kids, it's the young people in the community who are going to be the captains of industry making those decisions.
Yes.
Right? So when we are at a ripe old age, and for everyone who's kind of, in this age bracket listening, if at that point, this country and other countries around the world are not responding in a way which we would see as an evolution to how we've responded today, then we've done the next generation a disservice, because we should be giving them the tools that will enable them to respond in a way that is more effective than the ways in which we've responded today. And that's all fine. That's just the evolution of life. That's it. That is what it is. However, I don't see enough of that happening. I see young people and children being left out of the conversation. There's lots of organizations and interventions and everything that are for children and young people, but they don't include them. They're not part of the decision-making process. They've not asked about it, and it's not really central to the things that they really want to do. They're just being given something to do which people say is good for them. Whereas with what we do, we say, what do you love doing? Because whatever you love doing, chances are there's a business model and a revenue model behind it. So all we've done is help you to benefit more from the thing that you love doing in the first place. Everybody wants that, right?
And that's similar,
very early.
And that is similar to that young girl there who actually being empowered, being trained, and being mobilized and encouraged to create the PPE equipment, even though she's giving it away. But of course, she's creating a lucrative market eventually down the road regarding that, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, she's the type of young girl who in the future now knows that she has the capability to do this at a different level. She looked like she was, 10 or 11 years old or whatever. When she's in her 20s or 30s, she may be somebody who will have an organization or a business that supplies medical equipment to, countries of need in the millions. Who knows, right? But the fact is that seed is now being planted.
Yes.
She knows that she can do it. It's now, it's no longer, so she's not afraid of that possibility. Nobody can tell her you can't do that because she's already done it, right? Yeah. So now the limit of the expectation is in her hands and not anyone else's.
Right, fantastic. Now, Julia, listen, I want to thank you so much for those key points, those key nuggets there, where you spoke about, and as I said, the 5 tips from the entrepreneur: developing cognitive flexibility, build relationships, new habits, solve problems. And that is the key thing. If you're someone out there looking to break through, try to solve a problem at this time, and the importance of the next generation, which is really powerful at this time. Special deal. Have you got something on the horizon? Anything you want to, for any successful or looking for person who is listening, and if they want to get into the action as well?
Sure. So we've got 2 things that I can offer the audience listening. We have a new app called Ask Ultra. It's currently free for a short time, and you can go to askultra.co. It is an AI-powered chatbot, which we have taught to deliver entrepreneurial education to kids and young people. So it means that your child, your young person, can have access to this to this learning that we've been awarded a number of times over the last 5 years at any time, at their own leisure. They don't need to book in with anybody. It doesn't cost any money. They can access it whenever they want. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, next week we're running an online boot camp via Zoom, and that's starting on Monday. It's going to be £99 for the week.
Yes.
But for anybody who comes through Silburn, then we can offer that at half price. Anyone
that comes to okay, fantastic. So what we'll do, we'll set up something how this can be done with Julian after. Julian, I must say, someone just asked a question. What are some of the hows that we can encourage our next generation to get involved in to help safeguard the futures? What are some of the hows that we can encourage our next generation to get involved to help safeguard their future, the next generation?
I'll answer that by referencing Jack Ma. So Jack Ma is the founder and CEO of Alibaba.
Yes.
So he's highly regarded as one of the most successful entrepreneurs, that's ever lived. And he was asked at a talk at some point, what should kids be learning in school? And he said they should be learning music, creativity, art, dance. They should be learning all of the things that cannot be automated, right? Yeah. So, we're all afraid of robots and AI and all of these things. We're afraid of all of these things, taking away our jobs. But the creation of music, the creation of dance, the creation of innovative thinking, the creation of art. Now, these things you think sit within the creative industries, but actually, when they were NASA, at a point when I believe it was Apollo 19, when they had the tragedy of the 5 astronauts. Somebody can fact check this for me, but what they did was, in order to help them solve problems, they called in musicians.
Yes.
Musicians think differently, they think creatively. And so it brought a diversity of thought towards solutions. And NASA said that in that time, they were the most innovative they'd ever been.
Yes.
And the question they had was, why aren't we always like this? So to answer your question, Anthony, around the hows, it's about having a diverse education for your child and for your young person, right? So I'm an evangelist of entrepreneurship, but kids should also be learning. My kids, they learn they learn languages, they learn musical instruments, they're using dance, they're using all types of learning. I really do focus on creative aspects of learning. Yes. Because a lot of the stuff which is very academic can be learned by rote. Often it's around just memorizing, and exams are effectively memory tests, but it's about being able to practically apply the things that you learn is the how for me, and being able to widen the pool of skills that your child has or that young people have, so that when they go out into the world, they have a multitude of things that they can offer. They have a multitude of skills that they're confident about that they can offer to the world, I think is the way to safeguard their future.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you for that, Anthony, and thank you for that, Julian. And listen, I want to thank you so much for coming on.
No problem.
And of course, you and I, we keep the momentum and keep the relationship going as much as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for coming on. And of course, remember, there have been previous guests before, and I'll encourage you to check it out on my website. Got Anthony Francis. Anthony spoke about some of the 5 steps in working from home, successful tips, because sometimes people waste time. And Yannick Page from Jamaica, she spoke about tips for small businesses as well, as she's an attorney at law in Jamaica, go worldwide. And of course, maintaining the momentum with V. Roberts, who was a previous guest as well. She's spoke about a lot with PR. And looking forward, next week, we've got Nicole Millington as well. And of course, Mr. Aaron Branch, who's from Staffordshire, the digital expert as well. We'll look at different ways how to actually empower persons. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is it. And remember, like, subscribe, and touch the notification bell. And Julian and I will sort out how persons can get hold of this special deal for the boot camp next week. Subject, if I'm not in court, maybe I might try to sneak in. And you said you're one. I see I'm two. How is that? That's it.
I like that. I like that.
And thank you so much, very much, sir. And stay
No
safe.
problem.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on, and have a good night and all the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.